My husband and I were on our way to the title company to sign closing documents on a property we'd been saving for since the day we got married. Well, he stepped out to take a call. The closing agent slid a sticky note across the desk that just said, "Don't sign anything else." By the time I got home that night, what I found in our garage made me sit down on the cold concrete and laugh until I cried. It was a Tuesday in early March, the kind of morning where Cincinnati can't decide if it wants to snow or rain, so it just spits at you sideways while you scrape the windshield. I'd been up since 5 because my husband had been pacing the bedroom since 4:30, and once he starts pacing, the whole house knows about it. He's 6'2" and walks like he's mad at the floor. His name doesn't matter much anymore. I'll just call him my husband because that's what he was for 9 years, and that's how I still think of him in the bad dreams I have about once a month now. I'm a dental hygienist, 31 years old. I clean teeth 4 days a week at a practice off Montgomery Road, and on Fridays, I drive 40 minutes to a pediatric office in Mason because I like making kids laugh through the fluoride. My husband ran a small HVAC company he'd started with his cousin when they were both 23. For most of our marriage, I'd been the steady paycheck, the benefits, the one with the 401k. He'd been the dreamer. The closing that morning was for a duplex over in Northside. 2 units, one we'd live in, one we'd rent out. We'd been putting away every spare dollar for almost 5 years. My wedding ring had a chip of diamond in it because that's all we could afford in 2017, and I'd refused to upgrade it even when he offered because every time I looked at it, I thought about that duplex. $86,000. That was the down payment, sitting in our joint savings, transferred over from my high-yield account the week before, ready to be wired at closing. My mother-in-law came with us. That should have been my first sign. She'd never come to anything financial of ours before. Not the wedding planning, not the car loan, not the time we refinanced the apartment. But 3 weeks before the closing, she'd started calling me twice a day, all sweetness, asking how the paperwork was coming. Did we need any help? She was so proud of her boy, so proud of us. I told my husband on the drive over, "It's nice that your mom is excited. She's never really shown interest before." He'd kept his eyes on the road. "Yeah, she's been talking about it a lot lately." The title company was in one of those squat brick buildings off Reading Road, where every door looks like a dentist's office. My mother-in-law was already in the parking lot when we pulled up, sitting in her white Cadillac with the engine running, even though it was cold enough to need a jacket. She got out wearing pearl earrings, which I'd only ever seen her wear at funerals. "Honey," she said, and she kissed my cheek. She'd never kissed my cheek in 9 years. Not once. Today's the big day. The closing agent was a woman in her mid-50s with reading glasses on a beaded chain. She introduced herself as a senior closer and shook all 3 of our hands. And when she got to my mother-in-law, I watched her smile go just a little bit tight at the corners. I didn't think anything of it at the time. We sat down at a long oval table, stacks of paper in front of each chair. The closer started walking us through the deed, the mortgage note, the escrow, the title insurance. My husband was nodding along like he understood every word, which I knew he didn't because he was a man who let bills pile up on the counter until I sorted them. About 15 minutes in, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. "I gotta take this," he said. "It's the supplier. They've been jerking me around all week." He stood up, gave my hand a quick squeeze, and walked out into the hallway, pulling the door shut behind him. His mother smiled at me across the table. "Well, while he's out, why don't we move things along? The closer can show us the rest. No sense waiting." The closer looked at her, then at me, then said, "Actually, I'd like to go over a few documents directly with the buyers when they're both present." "I'm family," my mother-in-law said. "I'm helping them with this." There was a beat of silence. The closer slid a single piece of paper toward me, face down, like it was nothing, and at the same time slid a yellow post-it note across the table tucked under it. "Why don't you take a look at this disclosure form?" she said, in this perfectly even voice. "I'll be right back. I need to grab something from my desk." She got up and left. I lifted the corner of the paper. The post-it underneath said in small, careful handwriting, "Don't sign anything else." Tell him you need to go to the bathroom and call your bank now. I felt my whole face go cold. You know that sensation when you've stood up too fast and the room kind of bleeds at the edges? Like that, but sitting down. My mother-in-law was watching me. She had this little, expectant smile on her face, the same one she wore at Thanksgiving when she was waiting for me to compliment her green bean casserole. What's that, dear? Just a disclosure. I covered the post-it with my hand. My fingers felt like they belonged to someone else. I think I need the restroom, I said, and I was surprised at how normal my voice sounded. All that coffee. Oh, of course. It's down the hall, on the left. I grabbed my purse. Every instinct in me said, take your purse, take your ID, take your keys, and I walked out of that conference room as steady as I could manage. In the hallway, I could hear my husband's voice from around the corner, low and intense, on his phone. I didn't want to know who he was talking to. I turned the other way and pushed into the women's restroom and locked the stall and sat down on the closed toilet lid and tried to remember how to breathe. I called my bank. I called the fraud line, the number on the back of my debit card. My hands shaking so bad I had to dial it 3 times. I told the woman who answered that I needed to put an immediate hold on a wire transfer scheduled for that afternoon, $86,000 from my joint savings. I said I suspected fraud. She put me on hold. I sat there listening to a tinny version of Vivaldi's Four Seasons and staring at the grout lines in the bathroom floor and thinking, this isn't happening. This isn't happening. She came back. She said the wire hadn't been initiated yet, but there had been a transfer authorization request submitted that morning at 6:47 a.m. from our joint account into a personal checking account I didn't recognize. An account in just my husband's name opened 11 days ago at a different bank. Pending review. $86,000 from our joint savings into his solo account, set to clear at 2 p.m. Ma'am, she said, would you like me to flag this and put a freeze on the joint account? Yes, I said. Yes, please. And I should let you know that we have an active second-party alert on the account from a few days ago. Would you like me to read you that note? What note? She read it to me. It was from a bank employee, a teller, who'd flagged a previous attempted transfer of $9,000 from our joint account to that same new solo account 3 days earlier. The transfer had been pushed through. The teller had noted suspicious activity, possible coercion of joint holder, recommend follow-up. That teller, I learned later, had tried to reach me twice by phone. My husband had told her my number was outdated and given her his cell instead. I sat on that toilet for a long time. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15, I don't know. When I came out, the closer was waiting in the hallway by the water cooler, pretending to fix the lid on her coffee. She caught my eye. You okay? She asked, very softly. What's going on? I whispered. Why did you write that? She glanced down the hall. Last week, your husband came in by himself. He brought a power of attorney form that would have put the property in just his name. He wanted me to slip it into the closing packet. I said, no, that's not how we operate. He came back twice. The second time, your mother-in-law was with him. She paused. And I pulled your file this morning before you came in. The mortgage application was modified 2 weeks ago. The original had both your names. The new version has only his. He told the lender you'd agreed to be removed because of credit reasons. There are no credit reasons. Your credit is better than his. I just stood there. I shouldn't be telling you this, she said. But I have a daughter your age. I went back into the conference room and I smiled at my mother-in-law and I said, I'm so sorry, I think I have food poisoning. I had bad sushi last night. I need to go home and lie down. We'll have to reschedule. The smile dropped off my mother-in-law's face like a piece of plaster. Reschedule? Honey, we can't reschedule. The contract has a closing deadline. We're going to lose the property. I know, but I can't stop throwing up. Just sit down, drink some water. The closer can hurry it along. I'm going to throw up on the table if I sit here any longer. My husband walked back in then, putting his phone in his pocket, his face arranged into casual concern. Babe, you okay? I need to go home, I said. I'm sick. Really sick. We have to reschedule. Reschedule. But I'm going to throw up. Right now, on these papers. I started gagging. It wasn't acting. I genuinely thought I might throw up. He took a step back. Okay, he said. I'll drive you home. Mom, can you stay and tell them I drove myself, I said before I could think about it. I'll meet you at home, I just need to lie down. Stay and figure it out, I'm so sorry. I walked out of that title company on legs that didn't feel like mine, and I got in my car and I drove. Not home. I drove to my sister's house in Oakley. My sister is a paralegal. She's 2 years younger than me, and she has a son who's 4 and a husband who works construction and a face that looks exactly like our mother's. When I pulled into her driveway, she was carrying groceries in from her trunk, and she took one look at me and dropped the bag of oranges on the pavement. I told her everything in her kitchen, sitting at the same table where we'd done our homework as kids, when our mom had bought it off a neighbor for $40. She didn't say much. She made me tea. She wrote things down on the back of a Kroger receipt. When I got to the part about the new solo bank account, she stopped writing and looked up. He's been moving money, she said. He moved $9,000 3 days ago. The teller flagged it. That's not the only one, trust me. That's just the one that got flagged. If he's been planning this, he's been moving small amounts under reporting thresholds for months, probably years. I thought about my pediatric Fridays. The 40-minute drive each way, the lunches I packed in Tupperware so I wouldn't spend money, the vacation we kept canceling because the business needs the cash flow this quarter. I thought about the engagement ring, the chip of a diamond. Stay here tonight, my sister said. Don't go home, I mean it. I didn't stay there. I made one stop first. I went home around 6. He wasn't there. His truck was gone. I went straight to the garage because something had been bothering me all afternoon. My husband had told me twice in the last month that the garage door opener was broken and I should park in the driveway. I'd been parking in the driveway for 3 weeks. He'd been parking inside. I lifted the door manually. The opener worked just fine. There was a black storage trunk against the back wall, the kind you buy at a hardware store, with a combination lock on it. The combination was the same combination he used for everything. His birthday, backwards. I'd watched him punch it into his phone for 9 years. Inside the trunk, a brown accordion folder. Inside the folder, bank statements from 3 accounts I'd never seen, going back 14 months. A signed lease agreement on an apartment in Newport, Kentucky, dated 2 months prior in his name and someone else's. A woman's name. A printed sonogram. The date on it was January 4th. The patient name was the same woman. She was 26. She worked as a receptionist at the HVAC supply company he bought parts from. I knew that because there was an employee directory printout in the folder too, with her name circled in red pen. I sat down on the cold garage floor. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. It was the laugh you do when you've been holding it together all day and your body just gives up. I wasn't crying about him. I was crying because of the sonogram date. January 4th. That was the day after we'd had New Year's dinner with his mother, and she'd cried at the table about wanting grandchildren, and she'd looked at me when she said it, and I'd apologized. I'd apologized because we'd been trying for 2 years with no luck, and I felt like it was my fault. She knew. The whole time, she knew. There was already a baby. She just wanted it to be the right baby, from the right woman, with the right last name. I took pictures of everything, every page, every statement, every line item. I texted them to my sister. I texted them to myself in an email account he didn't know I had. Then I put the folder back exactly the way I found it. Closed the trunk, spun the lock, closed the garage manually, parked my car in the driveway. I went inside and I made spaghetti because that was what I told him I'd make for dinner the night before, when the world was still a place I understood. I set the table. I lit a candle. I put on the song that had played at our wedding. He came home around 8. He looked exhausted and angry. He smelled like beer. There you are, he said when he saw me at the stove. You scared the hell out of me today. Mom said you just took off. I'm sorry, I was so sick. I'm feeling much better now. I made dinner. He stared at me. I watched him try to find the trap. He couldn't find one. He sat down at the table. We need to talk about the closing, he said. We can't just lose this property. I worked too hard. I know, baby. I'm so sorry. Tomorrow I'll call them first thing. Maybe we can sign on Thursday. Tomorrow I'll call them first thing. Maybe we can sign on Thursday. Tomorrow. Or Friday. Whatever works. Eat your spaghetti. He ate. I watched him eat. I asked him about his day. He told me lies about the supplier. I nodded. After dinner, he went upstairs to shower. I heard the water running. I went into the home office and I opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet where we kept our marriage license, our tax returns, the title to my car. I took the file with my name on the deed of my late grandmother's house. The little two-bedroom in Norwood she'd left me before she died, that I'd been renting out for 3 years, that he'd never been on the title for. That was just mine. I put the file in my purse. I went upstairs. I told him I was going to bed early because my stomach was still off. He kissed my forehead. He smelled like my husband, but he wasn't, and somehow that was the worst part. That his hands and his mouth and the way he smelled were all exactly the same as the man I'd loved for 9 years, and underneath it was a complete stranger I'd never met. I lay in our bed and stared at the ceiling fan, and I waited until he fell asleep, and then I got up and I went downstairs and I called my sister and I said, "I'm coming over. I need to sleep on your couch." The next morning, I called out sick from work. I called my sister's paralegal friend, who was now a family law attorney. I sat in her office at 10 a.m. with my email attachments and my Kroger receipt of notes and a thermos of coffee, and I laid everything out. She didn't seem surprised. I think family law attorneys stop being surprised by anything around their 4th year. "Has he been physically abusive?" she asked. "No." "Has he made any threats?" "No." "But he was about to take $86,000. "Right. So, here's what we're going to do." What we did over the next 11 days was very quiet and very legal and very thorough. I went back home and acted like a woman with food poisoning recovering from a bad week. I made dinner. I watched TV. I let him sleep next to me, and I lay awake every single night staring at the ceiling fan, counting the seconds between rotations. My attorney sent a letter to our joint bank putting a hold on all transfers requiring dual signatures. We pulled my name off the joint account and opened a new one in just my name with my next paycheck routed to it. I made copies of every financial document in the house. I made copies of his laptop password by watching him type it. I didn't snoop in his laptop because my attorney told me explicitly not to. Anything obtained illegally couldn't be used. But I gave her the password. She told me she'd never use it, but she had it. I called the title company. I told them very politely that I'd been hospitalized and the closing would need to be canceled entirely, that I was no longer in a position to purchase property. The closer answered the phone herself. She said, "I understand. Take care of yourself." On day 6, my mother-in-law came over, unannounced. She brought a casserole. She sat at my kitchen counter and watched me make her a cup of tea, and she said, "Honey, are you and my boy doing okay?" "We're fine," I said. "Why?" "He says you've been off." "Quiet." "He says you've been off." "I'm just tired." She stirred her tea. "I just want you to know, if there's anything you're not telling me, about maybe not being ready for the property, about, not being able to have a baby. There's no shame in stepping back, letting him have what he needs." I set the kettle down. I looked at her. "What does he need?" I asked. "A future," she said. "A family, a real family." She said it so gently, like she was offering me a kindness. "I see," I said. I poured the tea. I gave her the casserole back. I told her I had to get ready for work. After she left, I sat in my car in our driveway for 20 minutes and I didn't cry, I didn't shake. I just sat there. And then I drove to my sister's house and I told her, "I want a divorce. I want everything. I want him to lose." My sister said, "Then we're going to make that happen. But you have to be patient." On day 11, my attorney filed. The petition included a request for an emergency restraining order on all marital assets, given documented evidence of attempted fraudulent transfer. It included the photographs of the brown folder, which I'd taken, by the way, in our shared marital garage, on items in plain view once the trunk was open. which my attorney explained was legally murky but defensible. It included statements from the bank teller who'd flagged the original $9,000 transfer. It included the modified mortgage application showing my name removed without my consent, which, my attorney explained, was forgery, and she'd be referring it to the state attorney general's office regardless of how the divorce proceeded. He was served at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday at his office. I know because his cousin called me at 11,004 asking me what the hell was going on. I didn't answer. At 11:30, my husband called me 18 times. At 12:15, my mother-in-law called me 9 times. At 1, his sister, who had never once called me in 9 years, called me twice. At 2 and here, my husband showed up at my dental practice in the middle of a cleaning, demanding to see me. My office manager, a 62-year-old woman named Patty who has been at the practice for 30 years, told him to leave or she'd call the police. He left. That night, I slept at my sister's. I slept on her couch for 3 months. The divorce took 11 months. There was a hearing about asset disclosure where his attorney tried to claim the brown folder didn't exist. My attorney produced the photographs. There was a hearing about the mortgage application where his attorney tried to claim I'd verbally agreed to be removed. My attorney produced texts from me to him from 6 weeks before the closing, asking about both our names on the deed. There was a hearing about the new Solo Bank account where his attorney tried to claim it was for business purposes. My attorney produced the lease on the Newport apartment. The other woman didn't come to any of the hearings. She'd had the baby in late August. A girl. From what I heard later, my husband had moved in with her in September, and by November she'd kicked him out for cheating on her with someone he'd met at a Reds game. The other woman never spoke to my mother-in-law again, who'd apparently told her she wasn't wife material. I got the house. I got my retirement accounts intact. I got back the $86,000 in our savings, which had grown to $91,000 because I let it sit. I got my grandmother's rental property, which had never been his anyway. The judge ordered him to reimburse my attorney's fees because of the fraudulent transfer attempt. He had to liquidate part of his stake in the HVAC company to pay it. The mortgage application forgery referral resulted in a misdemeanor plea. No jail time. Probation and restitution. The plea is part of the public record. Anyone who runs a background check on him for the rest of his life will see it. I never went back to the duplex in Northside. I didn't want it anymore. It felt like a thing that belonged to a different person. My grandmother's rental property in Norwood. I moved in there after the divorce. The tenant's lease was up in May. Perfect timing. It's a little 2-bedroom with a screened-in porch where my grandma used to drink her coffee and listen to the Reds on the radio. I painted the kitchen yellow. I bought a dog, a little mutt from the shelter who is afraid of stairs but will fight a vacuum cleaner to the death. My mother-in-law mailed me a card after the divorce was finalized. It said, "I hope you find peace. I'm sorry for my part." I read it once and put it in the recycling. I don't owe her anything, including a response. I saw my ex-husband once, about 8 months ago. I was at a coffee shop in Hyde Park on a Saturday morning, and he came in behind me in line. He looked tired. He'd lost weight. He had a smudge of something on his collar. He saw me before I saw him. He said, "Hi." I said, "Hi." He said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm good." We didn't say anything else. He got his coffee and I got mine, and we walked out the same door, and I went left and he went right, and that was it. I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction. Just a small, clean nothing. Like a room that's been finally aired out after a long winter. I am 32 now. I work the same job. I clean the same teeth. I drive to Mason on Fridays, and the same kids make the same fluoride jokes, and I laugh every time like I haven't heard them before. I'm seeing someone, a man who teaches 8th grade history and who, on our second date, asked me what my financial goals were, and when I told him about the house and the savings, he said, "That's incredible. You built that? That's all you." And didn't ask any follow-up questions about money for the rest of the night. I think about that closing agent sometimes. I never got her name. I sent a thank you card to the title company after everything was over, a generic one just saying, "Please pass this along to the woman with the reading glasses on a beaded chain." I don't know if she ever got it. I think about the bank teller too. The one who flagged the $9,000? I think about how many women out there had something just like this happen to them, and the teller didn't flag it, and the closer didn't slip a note, and they signed everything on the dotted line, and they lost everything, and they never knew until it was too late. I got lucky. That's the truth of it. I got lucky that two strangers, doing their jobs, decided to do a little more than their jobs. I keep the yellow post-it in my wallet. I laminated it. Don't sign anything else. Tell him you need to go to the bathroom and call your bank now. I look at it sometimes when I'm at a stoplight or when I'm sitting in my kitchen with my coffee and my dog snoring on my feet, and I think about the version of me that didn't read it, that signed, that walked out of that title company with my name off the deed and $86,000 in his solo account and a smiling mother-in-law kissing my cheek. She's out there somewhere, that version of me, a ghost. And every time I look at that post-it, I tell her I'm sorry I almost let her happen. Then I put it back in my wallet and I go on with my day. I've thought a lot in the years since about why it almost worked. Why I almost signed. Why a woman like me, with a steady job, with a decent head on her shoulders, with a younger sister who literally works in law, almost walked into that conference room and handed over everything I'd ever built. And the answer I keep coming back to is that I trusted the wrong person for too long, and I called it loyalty. Here's what I know now. Every quiet thing my husband did over those last 14 months was a small choice. Opening that solo account was a choice. Moving $9,000 at a time was a choice. Signing a lease in Newport with another woman was a choice. Asking the lender to modify our mortgage application was a choice. None of it was an accident. None of it was a moment of weakness. It was a long, patient series of decisions, and each one made the next one easier. And by the time he walked into that title company, he probably didn't even feel guilty anymore. That's what choices do. They build the person you become, one quiet brick at a time. And the same is true of his mother, who sat at my Thanksgiving table for 9 years smiling at me while she helped him plan it. But here's the other side of that same coin, and this is the part I hold on to. Rosalind, the closing agent. I didn't know her name then, I learned it later. She made a choice too. She could have shrugged. She could have minded her business. She would have gone home that night and slept just fine. Instead, she wrote 5 words on a yellow post-it and slid it across a table to a stranger, and she changed the entire direction of my life. Patty at my office stood up to a man twice her size on a Wednesday afternoon. My sister Delaney dropped a bag of oranges in her driveway and didn't ask a single question that wasn't useful. Those were choices. Decency is a choice, and the world keeps turning because there are people in it who quietly choose decency when nobody is watching. What I learned, sitting on that cold garage floor with a sonogram in my hand, is that being kind isn't the same as being soft. I had been soft. I had apologized at a dinner table for not being able to give a woman a grandchild while her son sat across from me with a pregnant girlfriend in Newport. Softness almost cost me everything. What saved me was the moment I stopped being soft and started being clear. Clear about what was happening. Clear about what I deserved. Clear about who to call and what to copy and which file to put in my purse before he came downstairs. If you take anything from what I just told you, take this. Read every paper before you sign it. Keep one account that's just yours. Notice when someone you love stops licking you in the eye. And when a stranger does you a small kindness, write them a thank you card, even if you never learn their name. The world runs on post-it notes from people we will never properly thank.